Uh, and I think you're the first person that's reached out to come on,
Mm.
which I'm honored to speak with you. And we met at Hutch's Tuesday Talks, and that Tuesday Talks was alien themed, extraterrestrial themed, and it was a pretty special night to be able to witness, these gifts that you've stated at Tuesday Talks, but also on your Instagram. So before we dive into that, though, I think it'd be great to get to know you better. So just kind of maybe introduce yourself, where you're from, and I think you're from New York City
Yeah.
and you moved to Austin recently.
Yeah, I grew up in New York, but I was actually living in LA before I came here.
Okay.
So I was in LA, going to school there, and basically, like, COVID hit during that.
Yeah.
And I was still there. I moved there because I wanted to experience something new, like, I didn't wanna just stay in New York.
Hmm.
So I went there, hopes of just having a new experience and also just getting away from the cold weather in New
Yeah.
York. But as I was there, like, I pretty quickly realized that it wasn't really, like, a place for me.
Hmm.
Like, it wasn't aligned with who I was, and I was just kind of there because I already committed to going to school there. But then once COVID hit, it was kind of like able to rethink
Yeah.
everything. So I was still there, like, it was locked down, everything, like, couldn't even go outside, to, like, places, and I was just like, "Okay, well, I'm here, and now school's online." So it took me a few months to, like, really make the decision, but my family actually moved out here,
Mm.
and they were like, "Why don't you, like, check out Austin and see, like, how you would like it?" So I came here for, like, 2 days just on a whim, and I was like, "Let me see, like, how it goes."
Hmm.
And it was just enough time for me to just make that decision.
Yeah.
So, like, the following month, I just moved here. Um
And the difference between California and New York versus like Florida and Texas, when it comes to COVID lockdowns and how strict they were, there's a big difference. Yeah, the geographic location, it varies for sure. And so if you were in LA, and I believe, are you like 22, 23 years old?
I'm 22.
22. So right out of college and getting hit with the COVID lockdowns, and I can't really even imagine. I'm 30. I was 27, so I was 2020. Yeah, I was like 27 when the lockdowns occurred. Lost my job. Was able to. I'm grateful I was able to move back in with my parents because wanted to be with my family because we just didn't know what was going to happen at
Mhm.
first, and then it wasn't as bad as we thought. But I still was close to my family. We did some cool stuff, and we had a lot of intimate times together. Um, but yeah, being in your early 20s, graduating college, and just experiencing the lockdowns, I'm sure you get the culture just shifts drastically too. I was talking to a very new acquaintance that might come on the podcast soon, but he told me, or he noticed a part of our back and forth with voice messages, and I was saying like, this and that, and the COVID lockdowns, and like my awareness of the darkness of human nature and this and that. And he was like, so you had kind of like you didn't have your own like spiritual awakening, or just not even spiritual, but just awakening within yourself through COVID versus like maybe something through, uh, maybe not external. It could have been, plant medicine or something like that. I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, it's been a combination. I think COVID definitely uh, changed something within me in my nervous system. Anyways, I'm totally rambling and interrupting your story.
You're good.
Uh, so you were here for like 2 days. Eh,
Yeah, I actually came, to surprise my mom for her birthday, so it was kind of like an
Oh,
excuse
cool.
for me to come. So I came, and then, yeah, I was just like, it was enough for me to be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna move here." And honestly, I didn't even, like, it wasn't like I went sightseeing and saw everything of Austin, but it was just enough to, like, be here physically and just know something was, like, pulling me to be
Mm,
here. And honestly, I was over LA even before, like, COVID hit, but then once it did, it was just like, "Okay, I really wanna get out of here."
How was the LA culture?
Um, the culture? You mean, like,
Or
pre-COVID
just
or
you could do you yeah, you could talk about both.
Yeah, I think before I think LA in general, it's a very, like sometimes I can see that it could be more superficial than other cultures, and that's just because, a lot of people go there with the intention of just making it big
Yeah.
in public industries like, acting and music and things like that.
Mhm.
And I myself have been, like, in the art, like, realm and just, involved in that, but I was always kind of, like, the type to feel more of an outsider, like, I went to a school where it was, like, the first time I experienced, like, what an influencer was, like, even in New York, like, I you obviously know influencers 'cause you, like, go and see it on social media, but, like, I would, like, go in class and I would see someone, like, just, like, vlogging what they
Yeah.
were doing, but it wasn't really, like, an authentic thing. It was just kind of like they were vlogging for the content, and, like, for me, it was just kind of like, "Okay, this is weird, like, I'm just trying to, like, get my work done."
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just, like, a different vibe that I don't wanna, like, excuse my language, like, shit on it, but it's kind of just like, yeah, I felt that the people that were around me were very much into, like, "This is what I'm gonna do, and I don't care, like, if I hurt anybody in the process, like,
Mm.
I don't care if I have to fake who I am or, like, put on these masks in order to, like, fit into what is deemed acceptable." And that was just something that within me never felt right. So experiencing that, especially in school and just seeing how people acted, yeah, I was just not like it's just kind of like, it is what it is, and I feel
Mm.
like that could be in any place that you go to, but I think for me, it was just like yeah, it was just like a mix of it, and yeah, I just didn't I just didn't vibe with it,
Yeah.
but anyways, once COVID hit, it was like everything got closed, like, even, like, the gyms were closed, like, you couldn't go, and,
The
like,
beaches
the
as well.
beaches, like,
Wild.
it was awful, like, honestly, I think I did pretty good because like, I literally bought, like, dumbbells, I bought, like, a what's it called? Like, a barbell that you can, like, adjust.
Mhm.
So, I got what I needed to, like, still do what I needed to do, but there was certain points where it was like, it really does feel like house arrest.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I noticed, like, other states weren't like that, and I'm like, "Well, why do I have to be home like this?" So
I had a buddy, Danny on, and he was saying he was there for a little bit, I think in LA or some area of California, and he watched the city mayor, exclaiming on a commercial, it was incentivizing people to rat other people out, which is and so ratting on people that were going outside, and they were, like, bulldozing the sand on the beaches and putting sand in skate parks, and then, yeah, and this guy's, like, incentivizing, people to rat each other out and call this number or text this number, which, I mean, if you look at if you if you read a history book, it does somewhat remind me of, like, a totalitarian vibe in the modern setting, which yeah, and other people might not agree with that. They might think, "Well, they're just trying to be safe and, trying to stop the spread," and it's like, "Okay, well, you're also, like, damaging people's mental and emotional health through subjecting them to confine themselves,
Mhm.
right?" And so, yeah, my buddy Danny was like, "This is where I just immediately just" I think he packed up his shit and left at some point, but, um, yeah, it was just wild to kind of witness that in California.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I feel like I experienced, like, the complete shift because I even in school, like, I was there a year prior, so I had experienced what it was like to, like, go to campus and, like, how the everyday was,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden, it was, like, a complete 180 of
Yeah.
like, okay, well, now you have to stay inside, now your classes are online, like, you can't even, like, go to another, like, apartment to see a friend or
Mhm.
something like that. So it was just like, it was just, like, something that none of us had experienced before. Um, so yeah, it was a complete switch, and then, yeah, just actually being inside and looking outside, and the few times where I would go outside, it was like, I would still notice, like, there was a lot of chaos.
Mm.
Like, I remember one time, like, I literally saw military tanks, like, on my block.
Really?
Yeah, and it was like, I felt like I was in a movie. I'm like, "What is going on?" Like,
Military tanks to stop people from swimming in the ocean.
I was in, like, the middle of downtown LA, so
Okay.
I don't know what that was. There was
People were
always, like
probably this was around, like, George Floyd too.
Yep,
So there was the
yep,
chaos of, like, COVID and George Floyd, so,
yeah, it
yeah,
was a mix of things going on.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you moved to Austin. Um, how's your experience been here?
It's been really good.
Yeah.
I feel like Austin's been the most, like, at home for me.
Mhm.
Like, even though I spent most of my life in New York, like, I I never had that sense of feeling at home in a city. I also lived in Hawaii for a few months, like, after I graduated high school, and I traveled since I was young, and, like, I've always been the type of person that, like, felt at home in a sense not being in one place.
Mhm.
So coming here to Austin, it was kind of like a switch in that of, like, finding a place that does feel like home and just having a balance. Because I feel like for me, it's really nice to be able to, like, go and just do activities that you normally would wanna do, but also have the solitude of, like, retreating into nature if
Mm.
you have to.
Yeah.
So that's something that I really love about Austin.
Yeah. Just to point at Hawaii real quick, I noticed on your Instagram you stated that Hawaii taught you, uh, to appreciate nature and land
Mm.
and the animals.
Yeah.
Um, so when you were living there, what about Hawaii kinda gave that learning lesson for you? Just the the fact that you're on an island and separated from the mainland?
Yeah, I mean, like, New York to Hawaii is, like, completely different,
Yeah.
so it's, like, noticing the difference of just, like, the locals that live there, like, how much they really, appreciate and value their land,
Mm.
like, they they even, like, littering, like, people don't litter there, like,
Mm.
in New York, like, they try to keep it clean, but, like, you'll just see
Oh, yeah.
people just throwing stuff and, like, it's like there's just no thought of like, "Oh, yeah, like, this is the planet that we live on. Why don't we, try to keep it as clean as we can or just care about it?" And over there, it's like the people and the land are almost like one.
Mm.
And yeah, even the animals, like, there's so much respect for the animals, like, they have laws there, like, you can get fined, like, if you touch a sea turtle, because they
Mm.
don't want you to, like, especially tourists, to be, like, messing with the animals or, like, the coral or anything like that. So, yeah, being there, like, really showed me how connected we all are and seeing how, like, okay, like, the people of Hawaii, they really, like, want to, keep their land as pure as possible,
Mhm.
and I feel like we gotten so used to living in an environment where, like, we don't remember what it was like to be in a land that wasn't, like, contaminated,
Mhm.
whether that be physically or mentally, and in knowing that, it just brought a deeper appreciation and, like, taking that with me of, like, wherever I go, I do want to be more appreciative of the land and doing what I can, to honor that.
Mm.
Even if that like, I'll be the type to, like, clean somebody's trash up, but also just, like, taking a moment to thank, like, the trees that are present, the animals that are present, the sky, everything. So yeah.
Yeah, when, I went to Costa Rica for about a week for a men's retreat that involved ayahuasca, um, and I think a combination of being in solitude in a way, so being in, like, rural Costa Rica, deep in nature, away from the noisiness of an urban city, and then also having, like, space of mind, so, like, not being on my phone as much, like, just not being mentally active, and then not being as caffeinated, not having any alcohol, just, like, purifying my life, and then, obviously, ayahuasca just fucking took me to another place as well, um, but after that experience, I did and this resonated for over it still does to this day, but it the degree to how much it resonated a month to 2 months after that experience, um, was higher than it is, I mean, now, but maybe it's because 'cause I'm working a lot, but, I did have this sense of we are all connected in a way, this unifying feeling and this unifying presence, which to, the average American or even my own friends or family, they might think that this oneness that you have, this unification, sounds kind of like mystical bullshit,
Mhm.
but it's a beautiful recognition and understanding. And you just have a lot more compassion and gratitude for everything in life at every moment. And, when I was a kid, I was like 14, confused, had a lot of illusions and portrayals of myself and not as healthy. And I remember like just smoking weed with my buddies in the car all the time and smoking blunts and just being high all the time. So just that all like masks certain things as well. And we would just like throw our trash out the window, which is I'm ashamed to even say that, but it is what that's what we did. And we didn't do it all the time, but at certain moments we would throw it out and not have any respect for nature. We didn't have respect for ourselves, to be honest. But, yeah, as I grow older and really try to work on myself in various ways, I do understand that, yeah, we need to make some changes, right? If you go walk down Austin, New York City, LA, any major city, I mean, Austin's actually cleaner than other cities, I think. I go
Mhm.
downtown here and there for work, and they've got a cool, uh, initiative and group of workers. They're called the Austin Alliance, and they pick up all
Mhm.
the trash and they
Mhm.
help with the homeless, so I haven't seen that in other cities. It's pretty neat to see that, but, yeah, it's still it's an issue. It's definitely an issue. Pollution and homelessness and just those 2 are big subjects to tackle. So, really neat. I saw that when I was doing a little bit of scrolling just to, review who you are and get to know you a little bit better. Um, and yeah, Hawaii just seems like a great place to kind of disconnect, but ground and connect with nature. So, anyways, your journey in Austin, it seems like you've gravitated towards the people here, and there's definitely a fit for you.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like also sometimes we say it's the place, but I think it's also, a balance of our internal state and our external environment reflects that. So
Mhm.
I feel like as I was going through my own journey, just prior to COVID, but in between then and then after, like I was growing as an individual. So I feel like by that growth occurring, um, it brought me to this environment. And I noticed that meeting people that were also on this similar journey of, you know, um, really, I feel like a common theme that I've noticed with majority of people that I've met here is like we all, like, came here to kind of, like, start over
Mm,
and do something different from what where we came from, like,
mm,
back home, like, do something different from the people that were in our lives prior, and just take a new way.
mhm,
So just being around other people that kind of, like, understand, like, what it is to, like, make that move that is, it could be considered risky, or it can be considered, maybe you're like, "Why are you doing that? Like,
mhm,
what's the point in that?" And it's like, it's sometimes there's things that we do that isn't, a physical or tangible explanation. It's more so of, like, it's something within that we feel,
mm,
and being okay with not, like, knowing the logical approach. It's just like, this is what it feels like, and I'm gonna follow that.
mhm.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that explains, uh, in essence of how I made my decision to come here. It's been almost 2 years, and some of it was opportunity in business, but also, just a subconscious and intuitive feeling based off of, just a little bit of research too on, like, through social media channels and seeing the the energy of Austin, the various demographics. It is a unique area, and you've got these pockets of health and fitness and tech and spirituality um so what are you currently working on right now? I think I saw you're a great artist. You paint
I do.
and what was the name of it? It was it involved the word alchemy,
Creative alchemy.
creative alchemy. Could you
Yes.
get into that a little bit?
Yeah, so creative alchemy is a class that I'm growing right now. I would say, like, the process just happened, or it's happening as my spiritual journey has grown. So, I've always been an artist, like, my whole life. I started painting when I was, like, I don't know, 3 years old, and I can
Mhm,
just pick up a brush. And I I went to school for graphic design, but painting has always been my it's been kind of like the thing that I love the most, and for some time, I wasn't doing it. Um, it was probably, like, after high school, because I also went to, like, a specialized visual arts high school in New York. So, literally part of my curriculum was, like, taking art classes and,
mm,
like, different mediums. So, it was really cool because I got to experience all these different avenues of visual arts,
mm,
but because it was, like, very taxing, and, like, every day it was, like, and we were getting graded on it, it almost started taking the fun out of making art.
mm,
And yeah, and then I was like, "Okay, well, I need to go get a degree." So I was like, I I was curious about, like, the digital aspect, but it was more so like, okay, this seems like the more, I would say, less risky route of going for a career. So I got my degree in graphic design, and then all those 4 years, it was a lot of, you know, also, I would say, taking the fun out of design work. So it
mhm,
was like I always had this love for it, but the approach that I was going at it was just too much and not as intentional for my soul to actually be happy.
mm,
So yeah, like, it was more so like, yeah, like, towards the end of school, like, probably halfway actually, where I was just like, I was just doing the assignments, but, like, I was losing, like, the spark in it. And
it's a little bit forced in a way because you need to do it for the degree in the class, and I had Brandon on yesterday. We were just talking about, um, having a space of mind, free time, and how, like, Einstein, he was working on his theory of relativity. And when
Mhm.
he finally got his aha moment, it was when he was just doing nothing. He was standing in a train station, and certain things happened in the train station, he was just observing. And that spark of, like, creativity just came to him, right? And I see that too. It's like when you give yourself just a lot of space of time and just mind and just to like flow out whatever you need to flow out, some of the best creative acts and sparks come to you. But if you're in school and you're trying to get a degree and they're like, well, you need to do these things on the curriculum, it's like, all right, well, I got to force this in a way. And it may still be great, but
Mhm.
if you're naturally creative, but it's tough. It's definitely tough.
Yeah, and I started noticing that too, just how I felt. I was like it was like high stress all the time, and like I tended to procrastinate, and I still do that sometimes, but it was more so noticing, like, why was I procrastinating? It was, like, literally trying to avoid that feeling of being stressed out about
Mhm.
getting something done in this amount of time or, like, whatever the prompts were. And, yeah, so it was I honestly I don't know where the overlap was because I really felt like it was really probably a few days after, like, they announced, like, "Hey, we're on lockdown,"
Mm.
where it was like it felt like everything kind of just stopped. And even though I was still in school, like, I remember, like, they started giving us extensions for things, and it was like because no one knew what was going on, so it
Mm.
was kind of like this pause of like, "Okay, well, I have this time now." And something within me literally just drew me to like, "Okay, why don't I just paint?"
Mhm.
And it was like this spark where it was like, I realized that I hadn't painted in years, like, since I graduated before, it probably had been at least 2 years,
Mm.
or more, or 3 since I painted, and I had, like, extra supplies with me. I was living in, like, a it was like a student apartment complex thing, so I had a shared apartment and, like, really the only, like, private space I had was my room, so I, like, grabbed, like, a garbage bag, like, taped it on the floor, and then that was kind of, like, my painting area, so I was just started painting on the floor, um, and I noticed that the way I was painting was it was just a different feeling from what I was experiencing in school, because I just allowed it to come naturally. It
Mm.
wasn't this moment of force. It was like, okay, like I really just feel like painting and there's no expectation of what it's gonna look like.
Yeah.
So that was like I think that was like that moment that sparked that in me. And I was painting more so as just like a hobby after that. So I just started, painting again. I was still in school, but it was like this was something that I knew was always like there. And then honestly, when I moved to Austin, I feel like that was where I started even seeing the art community here.
Mm.
And I thought I was like, "Whoa, like, this is really cool," because I didn't even expect Austin to have such a big art community.
Mhm.
And I just saw, like, all the murals around and just, like, this different approach to art where I was like, "This is really cool." Um, and yeah, I feel like it was this switch that happened because I was still like, I got my degree, and I speak of this like it happened a while ago, even though it didn't, but it feels like that
Mhm.
because it's like, I feel like I've changed so much very constantly that it's like, even like last month, I can see things as a completely different version of me.
Mhm.
So anyways, yeah, with creative alchemy, it was really just this process of me reconnecting with my creativity
Mhm.
and with my art. And while this was happening, like I was uncovering my own psychic abilities.
Mhm.
And that also happened pretty much at the start of COVID.
Yeah.
So it was like this overlap where as I was tuning more into my senses and having the, like, heightened abilities, like, art was an outlet for that, and it
Mm.
was a tool for that. So when I moved to Austin, it was more of, like, having this overall understanding of how everything is connected, and
Mhm.
I feel like I've always had that, even as a young kid, but it was, like, after, like, having, like, a spiritual awakening, it was, like, really everything that we do is
Mhm.
connected.
Yeah.
Um, so I kinda saw this bridge between my art and my psychic abilities,
Mm.
and I I started, like, doing new things, like, I started using more, like, intentional practices, like, just when before I paint, I always set my intention, and I like to clear my space, so I'll usually, like, sage or Palo Santo, put some incense, like, making sure that it's a space that feels good to me and not, like, a space that is forced.
Mhm.
So that was something that I started incorporating, and then, uh yeah, just connecting with a higher power, like, connecting with more than what was there, and with that in mind, it was like creative alchemy just started forming,
Mhm.
and I noticed that when I put my intention and when I do things with in a you can call it in a ritualistic way of, like, as I'm painting or as I'm doing any form of art, I'm literally alchemizing whatever I have internally.
Mhm.
And I think as humans, just as people, we all have the ability to alchemize whatever we're going through.
Mm.
And I think a lot of these tools, um, they were lost. Like, I feel like creative alchemy is in a sense it's it's a modern version of lost knowledge,
Mm.
because if you go back and back to ancient times, like art was always there.
Yeah.
Like, it was always there. It was just something that we weren't really, I feel like it wasn't taught in the way that it has the potential to be.
Mm.
Like, the way that I was taught, yes, if you wanna paint, like, a realistic portrait that requires a level of technique and skill. So that's understandable of, like, the technical aspect. But a lot of what I was taught was just, like, producing and, like, basically, like, putting value on it based on somebody else's opinion.
Mm. Mm.
And for me, it was like art is something that is sacred to ourselves, and it doesn't need to look a certain way.
Yeah.
Like they say, like, it's cliche, but, like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So it's like, even if one person might not find that art beautiful or whatever you make, or not even understand it or make sense of it, if it means something to you, that's all that
Mhm.
matters. Um, so yeah, that was kind of like this process of creative alchemy, and I'm still integrating new things with it, because I feel like when I paint, it's not just like, "Okay, I have my idea, now I'm just gonna paint," and I see the finished piece. It's more so like the picture or the story that's wanting to be formed, it comes as I'm just sitting and being present.
Mhm.
Because, again, I'm not having an expectation of what it's gonna look like.
Mm.
I'm just tapping in and feeling whatever's going on and just like,
Yeah.
"Okay, this is what's coming out."
Yeah, to comment on a thread that came to me when you spoke to cutting out a garbage bag and beginning this process of painting that contrasted with school kind of making it a timely obligation versus the flow of just naturally letting it out. Um, it was just funny that you said that because I'm speaking to someone else that reached out. There's this fictitious book that I recited recently. It's called The Essential Revolution. It's unreal. It's so good. I highly recommend it. I think you would love it. Um, Based off of like just your energy, a surface level overview that I've dived into your world a little bit. But the author, he's got like 80 followers on Instagram. He's never on it. He hired someone like a media person, but my friend recommended the book. And so that friend knows the author. And so he sent this video that I posted of the book. And so now I'm like So the author has reached out to me, and we've just been having a discussion of just two people having a discussion about the book, but also just random things. Now it's just like evolved to voice messages, and he's been telling it's. I laugh, and he's because he said this a few times throughout these voice messages, this exchange of voice messages. He said that it's kind of psychedelic how the process of writing the book came out to be, because I was learning along the way and I didn't know, I couldn't even really tell who was writing it. Right. And so this form of expression that kind of comes naturally, and you have no idea what the fuck is going to happen. Like I do this with music sometimes. I don't do it enough. And I look forward to focusing on music more. And this right here is like a form of art for me. Um, but like music is also definitely there too. Um, just it's a beautiful thing, and it's kind of this magical part of being a human, right? Is there's no explanation for it, right? It's like all I can find are these trends of when you just give yourself open space of mind and presence, these things just, it's like a source that comes to you for creativity. And there's this book, my buddy, I forgot, he's very, The Art of War, I think it's called. And this author speaks to like resistance and dealing with resistance of writing and approaching every day writing when you don't want to. Um, and then also just how he treats it as like it's this source. And he's not like this overly religious person. He just talks about him being a writer, and it comes to him from somewhere, our own creativity and imagination. And it's really, there's no, and I want to speak to what you mentioned, like your, these psychic
Mhm.
abilities and what we witnessed at Tuesday Talks, because, you know, I'm, I'm still establishing my own spiritual understanding, my own path, right? And I come from mainly like an atheist background. I was raised Catholic in Massachusetts, and my family, my great grandmother, my grandmothers were religious and they prayed, and there was a healthy sense to it. And then certain members of my family kind of lost that religious dedication and intention due to the Catholic Church becoming kind of corrupt and egregious towards like little boys and whatnot. And so that kind of dropped off, and any kind of intention or spiritual awareness or practice was kind of gone. Right. And I would say that there's certain aspects of my family and people that I love in my life growing up that still had certain ways of behaving and just being that might have been spiritual to them. Right. But it wasn't these organized religions of Catholicism or Christianity. So I never really had that growing up, like a really overly religious focus. And more so, I've been focusing on it and having the intention to do this on a daily basis, so that it's not just for when it's moments of loss or challenges. Because some people turn to spiritualism, practices when they're in a tough moment. I think it should be a daily thing. I want to be able to practice that more, and that can vary for everybody, right? Like freedom of your own spiritual practices. And so at the same time, I come from, we're both from America, which is very focused on the scientific method and rationalism and metrics and, materialism. And so I do have this kind of skepticism with anybody that approaches me, right? It's not just you. And the gentleman, this author that I spoke to, it's very interesting that he said this recently in a voice message, and he was talking about there are dark entities occurring. And so my rational brain, my American brain, was like, I don't know what to say to this. I'm not saying that I don't believe you. I'm not saying that I don't trust you. It's that I just can't, I haven't embodied that yet. What I relayed to him was that my 9 to 5, I work for a Bitcoin company. This and just to not get too into this, to, digress, but Bitcoin is this software, is a decentralized cryptographic network that can allow human beings to exchange, like it's a medium of exchange. It's a form of money that's decentralized. And it's like freedom money. Whereas the form of money that we've had for at least 100 years, around 100 years, has been in the control of a small amount of people. And they have like it's very, very manipulative, and it's consolidated power. And so so Bitcoin being this decentralized, like no human being owns the network, controls the network. It's governed by mathematics rules, not rulers. It opened my eyes, and this all happened during COVID. It opened my eyes towards something's really wrong here. So I was seeing COVID and the lockdowns and different things from the media, and then George Floyd, and how focused everyone was on George Floyd and how enraged everybody got. And then I just started going on social media a lot, on Twitter, and I was learning all these different things, and I was seeing the dark side of humanity. And I was turning to this tool, this technology that's like still to this day blowing my mind. And I think that anybody that has an independent way of thinking and that's strong minded like yourself should dive into it. But it's a very complex topic, but you can make it simple. Anyways, what I told this guy was like, I don't necessarily disagree with you, or I don't believe you. I do trust you. It's that I just haven't embodied it yet, right? And I'm very open minded, and so I did tell him though that I do feel a shift. Like I had this I remember where I was. It was back in 2020 in Boston, in my tiny little Boston apartment room. And when I was learning this technology by way of knowledge, I just like my consciousness expanded. I was like, whoa, there's something to this. This is a tool that everybody can use. Individuals can be empowered by this. And then everything just changed. Like I just started going, I was so, like I got goosebumps just talking about it. Like I was so naturally curious about the opportunity to help people be like, yo, you don't have to be a victim to this kind of propaganda, like staged media in America or elsewhere, not even just this country, or a victim to the rat race of our money system, chasing, you know, I don't want to get into economics, but when they print trillions of dollars, your savings account, it stays at 10,000. Let's say it's at $10,000 and you're saving like a responsible human being. When they print more money, you're still losing money. It's invisible. It's an invisible tax. And so people don't understand that. And it's sad because people are saving, they're trying. And so anyways, Bitcoin is this tool to preserve your time and your value. So I did kind of get too far and I said I wasn't gonna, but anyways, I told this gentleman and he just told me this the other night that there are dark entities. And I'm like, I don't know what to say about that. But, and then at the same time, you're on the podcast and you're talking about light language. And there's this just interesting moment for me to kind of get two people that are telling me these things. And this gentleman's very, like his language in his book is it's very impactful and it's very insightful. And even if anybody, he told me, he's like, I designed it for someone that's not even on a spiritual path. That's not even like expanding their consciousness. Just by reading it and turning the page, they're embodying the writing. And then they're like, whoa, that makes sense. It's kind of spiritual woo-woo stuff, but it's making sense. There's some truth to it, right?
Yeah.
And then one other thing before I like to let you dive into what we experience at Tuesday Talks is there are certain people, especially in the Austin area, that do have a spiritual ego. Like I call it like spiritual ego or narcissism or materialism, right? And so there's this, if you're an intelligent human being, you're trying to trust others, right? You want to trust other people. And I trust you and I trust this other gentleman. And I think I have a gift of having a good sense of intuition. I think most of us do, but I follow it and I usually feel like I'm right with it. And so it's funny because I was gonna, when we exchanged social media at Tuesday Talks, I was thinking about it over and over. I was like, I kind of want to have her on the podcast. And I was already kind of like thinking about other stuff and doing other things, and then you reached out. I was like, "Okay, perfect." Um, but something happened at Tuesday Talks, and everybody was captivated. Um, so could you describe, um, maybe just kind of drop the setting of where we were, but then also then dive into what occurred, and then also, if you remember, because I know you said that
Yeah.
sometimes you don't remember,
Yeah.
and then we can kinda get into more into this topic.
Yeah. Honestly, I forgot what I think well, do you remember what the question was? I feel like it was a
For
question
so,
that
yeah, so the setting was in a backyard in our friend's backyard, and he does this thing called Tuesday Talks, and it's typically, like, entrepreneurial focus, like, what challenges are you facing? What are you also really ignited towards? But this one was different. It was like, this is, uh, extraterrestrial alien themed, because there was a lot at the time. This wasn't long ago at all. This was like a month, maybe not even a month ago,
no.
3 weeks or so,
Yeah, probably.
and there was some major news released about extraterrestrial beings and sightings of it, and a lot of that's been going on in the news. I mean, it's not old topics, right? It's
Mhm.
just more prominently, in conversation in the eyes of the public. And so, yeah, he wanted to start this little Tuesday Talks. It was like a dozen of us in a circle in it was a beautiful day in the backyard, and he was asking different questions, and I honestly don't know exactly what it
Mhm.
was verbatim, but it was talking about we would just, like, raise these different colored pieces of paper to reflect on yes or no if we agreed with a
Mhm.
question. But
Yeah.
then I got to a point where it was kind of like open mic, and you spoke, I think, at least 2 to 3 times, and initially you did you revealed, like, I've been able to kind of receive a different these different signals
Yeah.
called the light language,
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
And, uh I mean, I was immediately curious. It's like, "Oh, okay." But we still had to let people talk, and then
Yeah.
it got to a point where it circled back to you, and you started talking. I can't remember everything you were saying, but then you, like, as you were flowing with your talking, you, like, put out a disclaimer. You're like, "When it comes to me, it just happens." And then you just started going, and
Yeah.
you started going with it, and it was this different language that I've never heard before. I don't think it's not a human language. And it lasted for about a minute, I think, and then you translated it to English, and it was as if, like, ancestors from a different place were saying that they were watching us, that we see you, and that we're here to tell you something, like, empower you or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was,
I don't either.
and I
Yeah.
but it was interesting that like, I've never experienced anything like that, and I never really thought of any human ability to receive certain things. So, anyways, I everything that I was just saying earlier about, like, trying to trust and still ask questions, like,
Mhm.
I just wanna learn more about it.
Yeah.
And I think you said, like, in 2020 it started to happen, right?
Yeah, my journey with it has been it's honestly, like, I feel like my life is a movie. Sometimes, like, I'm not even joking. I think the first time it happened, I actually started writing before I started speaking.
Mhm.
So I started it was one day I was still in that room, in that apartment that I was living in LA, and I literally felt like I was, like, tripping even though I had never tripped in my life before, but
Mhm.
it was, like, this sense of, like, I feel like, the world seemed different, and, like, I was in the room, and it felt like time had stopped, and I could see almost, like it felt like things weren't as solid, like,
Mm.
the walls were kind of, like it felt like I could almost, like, touch something and, like, I would, like, just put my hand through the wall. It was very weird how it looked, and
And you were on no
I
psychedelics.
was on no
Okay.
psychedelics,
Yeah.
promise. And I was just kind of, like, sitting there and, like, looking around the room, and then I like, my hearing, it was kind of like, it felt like my how do you describe that when, like, it's almost like things start feeling, like you can't really hear anymore. Like, it was like a yeah, like, everything went silent,
Mm,
but it was kind of like a distance. It was like I don't even know if my roommates were home at that time, but it was like I could still hear it very faintly, but it was like the sound started getting farther away.
mm.
So I was just there, and then, like, I had the urge to
By the
just,
way, real quick, just wanna make sure that's not covering the mic's not covering your face.
like
We'll make sure that yeah. Let's
okay.
see.
It was like
There you
okay, that's
go.
better.
Okay, continue.
Um, yeah, so yeah, I had the urge to just, like, grab a pen, and I started writing, and it was like it was super fast too. It
Mm,
was like my hand had never moved that fast, and I it was just like this state of, like,
like a download.
it was a download, yeah, and I didn't know what a download was at that time. I was just, like, experiencing this thing that I'm like, "Okay, this is new, this is weird, what's going on?" And after that, like, yeah, I had these symbols or this written language, and I knew it was something because I'm like, "Okay," like, it felt like I was, like, writing instructions or
So,
something.
what you were writing was not English?
No.
It was just straight up the light
Yeah,
language.
yeah.
Okay,
So it was, like, symbols that I had never seen before.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
and, um, I feel like the thing that partly got me through this was my mother and I were going through a spiritual awakening at the same time. So, I had reached out to her and I was like, "Hey, like, this has happened to me," and I don't know what her journey was, but she already knew. She's like, "Oh, this is light language." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like,
Really?
what
So
it
your mother has experienced it as well?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, "Okay," and I don't know what she sent me. She started sending me, like, articles and, like, there was people that were openly talking about this and openly talking just about extraterrestrial life and, everything that was going on during COVID. So I just started, like, actually listening to people, and
Mhm,
I was like I think that in that it was kind of, like, confirming what I was already going through.
mhm.
So yeah, and then I think that was I don't know when they released that documentary on, like, the Epstein Island.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know if that was in
few
2020.
years ago,
It
but
was like
it's interesting because it was right before COVID,
yeah, and
before the mass populace could really die. I feel like a good portion of the population knows it at this point. It's been talked about on Joe Rogan, on so many different platforms. So it's pretty obvious now. But it did start that documentary, I think, came up on Netflix. Um, and then, yeah, COVID kind of happened and the chaos of just different things kind of distracted everyone.
yeah, so honestly, like, there was an overlap there, I feel like, because as I was kind of, like, opening my channel, like, I started feeling this depth of grief, and
Mm,
it was like I felt so connected to these children that I have never met or seen,
mm,
and it was like, "Whoa, like, what is going on?" Like, I had this grief, and it was almost like the the connection and the empathy with these kids, almost like kind of like I would say it literally, like, burst my crown chakra open, and that was kind of what allowed that to flow
mm.
because it was like yeah, it was like another level of grief and anger and just, like, fully allowing myself to be like, "What is wrong with this world?"
And for context, because I mean, you never know. Some listeners might not know what you're talking about,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
The Epstein, there's a lot of depth going into that story. I actually have a couple books on it that I haven't read, and it's gonna be a mind blower, and it's not a fun thing to read about. But
Mhm.
what it is Epstein was a part of like intelligence agencies that was this blackmailing system, and he created this child sex trafficking um, system that was blackmailing tons of different people. I mean, there's like a list. that hasn't been revealed, and it's not it's been kind of, like, diminished, and so but all these different people that are very powerful politicians came to this island that he had, and, um, yeah, it's really disturbing. It's a disturbing aspect of modern times, and just recently I saw, like, Mel Gibson is
Mhm.
trying to release a documentary on this with Hollywood and um, the current sex trafficking system, and supposedly, like, this is like this is what I heard, fact checked me,
Mhm.
but supposedly it's a 34 to $35 billion industry. And you know what? Every time this might be so unrelated, but every time I see like my Amber Alert go off, I'm like, dude,
Yeah,
that and it happens in Texas
a
a
lot,
lot.
a lot.
And it's like my heart rings out. It's like, maybe that could be like it's all young kids
Yeah.
getting stolen. And yeah, it's just like a bunch of weird things going on with that. And so I can understand the grief you felt because I've also felt a lot of compassion and wanted to learn about it, which is kind of a weird thing. I've said to friends, like, I want to learn about this evil because I
Mhm.
think it's going to change me to want to, like we got to act here in a certain way. So,
Yeah, so I kind of went off on a tangent, but, like, really thinking about it now, I feel like that was really what woke me up. Um,
was that during COVID, you said?
it was during
Yeah.
COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was it was within the same I don't know, the same week or something that I just remember I think it was probably right before, and it's hard because I feel like sometimes literally my sense of time just, like,
Hmm.
overlaps, but I was I think I had read something about it. It was something that, like, sparked this, like it was just, like, this deep, deep emotion, and right after that, it was when I started writing, and I thought that there was some type of connection there, but I still hadn't gone into the realm of, ETs and other life. It was just like this was a very human problem, right? This
Hmm.
human problem of violence, of greed, of just causing pain, inflicting pain, especially on innocence.
Hmm.
And I I really started doing a lot of research. Like I said, I started listening to people. I'm not sure if you've heard of Elizabeth April. She's I you can call her kind of like this ET uh talk person. Like
Hmm.
she's very open about her experiences and she has her own podcast too. And I had seen like her YouTube videos and things and she had mentioned about just like the things that were happening with the children,
Hmm.
but a lot of the information and like I would say like a deeper understanding of it was coming through what she was saying was the intergalactics. And I didn't really I didn't really have a hesitation. For me, it was kind of like I've always felt like we weren't alone in this world. And I've always felt like there was more to what we were being told and there was more to what we were being taught. So, it was almost like these pieces started, kind of coming together. Um, but in order for me to get to that point, I, had to allow myself to truly feel, uh, anger and feel grief
Hmm.
and feel, um, disappointment, whatever you wanna call it, especially about something other than me.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times in our day to day, we get caught up in our life and the things that, are gonna make our life better. And, it's our society's very like, okay, what's in it for me? And when I was able to kind of like take the attention off of myself and just sit and be aware of what's happening in the world. Okay, like this is our situation. And then learning about what was happening with the children, um, it was like this new level of compassion and empathy occurred. And I think a lot of the connection between just opening and being a channel is the ability to allow yourself to feel. Um, because feeling isn't always going to be good. Um, I think especially during COVID and lockdown and that, it was probably one of the, like, the lowest times, emotionally and mentally for myself because I was really sitting with everything. I was sitting with myself, but also sitting with, just the state of the world and the dark stuff
Mm,
that is happening and have happened for centuries. And it was just like I think a lot of things have been kind of just put under the rug, and
mhm,
it's been a lot of buildup where it's like we've been told what we need to focus on, but there's more things going on.
mhm,
Like, yes, yes, there's issues with this over here and there's an issue with that over there, but it's like I started realizing that, like, it was almost like I was being told where I needed to put my attention to, and I was being told, like, what I needed to stand
yeah,
for, what I needed to fight for,
mhm,
and losing that connection with, like, well, what do I feel? Um, and just that thought in itself was sparked by feeling,
mhm,
by going, like, sobbing like there was no tomorrow
mhm.
and just yeah, I forgot what what was the original question that you asked, but, um, I think it was about, like,
Just
my gifts,
yeah,
and yeah, the way that I was able to tap deeper into them was through feeling everything,
mhm,
um, and I feel like I used to be afraid of feeling because I knew within that I was sensitive and I was more likely to um yeah, just to be sensitive towards something,
mhm,
and I learned to shut that off just because of my environment. Even like growing up in New York, it's a very like action oriented city. It's very much like do what you got to do, like I don't care what's going on, like
mhm.
just do it. And I yeah, like I just learned to kind of shut off my emotions and shut off like my empathy really. And when COVID hit, it was like this reverse of like all that time where I was kind of like putting how I was feeling to the side or like just things that internally just didn't feel right within. It was still there. I was just ignoring it.
Mm,
Um and then now, now it seemed like the whole world had stopped. It's like, okay, now what do you do?
mhm,
What do you do when, you know, you don't have to go to your job? You don't have to like answer calls. You don't have to do this. Like all these obligations had stopped. And yeah, it felt like a reset.
it was a pause for everyone, a breather,
Mhm.
and I heard a lot of married couples found out that they weren't really truthfully connected during that time. It was like
Mhm.
a maybe that's one example of many different realizations during that time, but, it's interesting, yeah, that COVID, it was this dark period of our recent history, but it also shined a light on some of these inauthentic expressions of ourselves, or maybe that we were carrying forward. So, uh, yeah, try to look at the silver lining in different things,
Mhm.
but, question I have for you, you said your mother knew already.
Mhm.
So what does she say, and how has this developed?
Yeah, I mean, my my mother was very much the type of mother that, like, if if I said that, like, I made friends with, like, I don't know, a hobbit, she'll be, like, entertaining the idea. Like, she was a very much, like, didn't really, um, stop me from just
Mhm,
thinking what I wanted to think.
mhm,
And I was taught in a I would say a pretty, like, open-minded household. She was raised Roman Catholic, but she always considered her, like, the black sheep of the family. And, like, from a young age, I was, like, taught about, like, meditation and yoga
mm,
and just, like, practices, very much, in health and wellness. And, yeah, I learned a lot from her, and she always kept an open mind, especially when it came to just having your own thoughts and having your own beliefs.
mm,
So I never felt like I was, forced to think a certain way. Um, but yeah, she was very much intuitive herself. She told me from a young age too that she was able to see spirits and she had abilities. So it
mm,
was kind of like this it wasn't a thing that was odd or weird to discuss. Um, but yeah, I think it was kind of like this other level of like, okay, once we both went through the spiritual awakening, it was just unlocking another layer
mm,
to our perception and to our reality. And yeah, I honestly I didn't really ask her like what was the moment for her, but she kinda just seemed to, like, have picked up on things right before me, so she had enough kind of background to be like, "Yeah, this is what you're going through."
mm,
Um, but yeah, like, we were kind of both in this process, and, it was I think it was really great that I could talk to her about it, 'cause I feel like I know a lot of people that went through it and didn't have anyone to share it with, especially family.
mm,
And, um, I know that a lot of families were, you know, I don't wanna say broken apart, but there was a lot of distance that was created, just because of, just these change of perceptions and
mm,
how these perceptions just weren't aligning. So yeah, she confirmed a lot of things, but it was also, like, sparking more interest in, like, asking questions.
mm.
So, yeah.
And what were those questions
I
that
mean
came to mind, like, once it kind of erupted, right?
mhm. Yeah, I went down a whole rabbit hole. I was like
'Cause I still don't really know to get more esoteric into the
mhm,
light language,
mhm,
it's the general sense is it's a language that seems to provide a channel to the human consciousness from some, some other place, dimension, if you will. Um, but do you yeah, I'll let you continue with, like, the rabbit hole that you went down.
yeah, I think so I really forgot what was the moment, but honestly, like, it was right before the presidential election,
Mm,
and that was when I started asking questions. It was like this this newfound, curiosity for, like, how the media pushes certain ideologies and certain, ways of thinking, and it felt forced.
mhm,
It was this feeling of force, and I'm like, "Hey, I know this feeling,"
yeah,
but it was more, like, obvious to me, and I was like, looking at the news, and then I was, with the thing about the children, and, like, I started, just looking into, like, that list was pretty. I think at the time, I don't know how long it was out, but it was across several industries of people, and I was, like, making these connections of, like, "Okay, well, they say these people are corrupt, why wouldn't these people be involved?" And then I started looking into, just actors and musicians, like, it was just, like, this whole thing of, like, "Whoa," like, everything is
Yeah,
connected.
it's scary to even think about, like, some of the people that we looked up to potentially are involved with this,
Yes.
and there's, like, this mask over everything that we knew when it comes to, like, you said several different industries, whether it's politics, whether it's actors. Specifically, it sounds like it's Hollywood, which maybe at a time in, like, the early 1900s, I don't even know when Hollywood really became,
Mhm.
like Hollywood. It might
Mhm.
have been maybe the middle of the 1900s or early,
Mhm.
but it seemed like it was this amazing thing to be a part of, right? Like, it's this opportunity to act and express your artful expression, but it just became really, I think, just through greed and through lust and through materialism and this is a constant chase for lust, it's become so demented.
Mhm.
And I mean, as a film that just came out, it's like The Sound of Silence or something like that.
I wanna see it. I heard
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah,
yeah.
it just recently came out. Yeah, I think it just came out. And then Mel Gibson, like I said, potentially, I mean, if Mel Gibson dies, I think we know why. Mel Gibson didn't kill himself. Uh, but it's just yeah, all of that came crashing down for me. It did feel forced during COVID. George Floyd, it wasn't like it's not like I don't have compassion for
Mhm.
African Americans at
Mhm.
all. That's not the case.
Mhm.
It's that this all seems like a fucking play.
Yes.
Everyone is what was so odd was like everyone on social media, even myself included, started to feel like this I felt bad about myself.
Mm.
I felt guilty.
Mhm.
And if I didn't comply with what was being forced, then I'm like a white supremacist or a racist or whatever. I'm not. And so it just felt really uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And then I started to notice, I was like, no, this is bullshit. This is fucking bullshit. Like, you can have compassion for any human being, but this is like really intentional and an act. And it like feels, even if the whole events that played out with George Floyd and the police officer
Mhm.
were all accidental and
Mhm.
just like natural, the way it was organized afterwards was just like they used it as bait and it was just circulated and it enraged everybody. And yeah, it's like a constant, the media is just, I mean, there's so much more facts and information about like the Twitter files now too.
Yep.
Twitter files are showing United States, I mean, United States intelligence agencies have been like almost another arm or department of social media companies, which is like super. I mean, it's a clear violation of the Constitution. And then more older traditional forms of media like the New York Times, like they are not even to me at this point free like actual journalists. They're just they're propagandists. And it's like once you realize all this shit and it blows up like during COVID too, and then it's like then you can ask about the virus too. It's like whether it was intentional or not, some crazy ass shit was organized
Yep.
to make us all afraid. And guess what? Like if you're in a constant state of fear during the virus going around, that's not going to help you with recovering in your immune system. So it's like super contradicting to the human essence of maintaining good health. It's like if the virus is there, we can still do our best to help with the spread or whatever. But the how like fear mongering and like it was just anyways, like it was so obvious. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's very shocking to the nervous system and your reality of where you grew up. Like I was born in 93 and the 90s were just like a happy time. And even the 80s, it seems like it was good for the American citizen. It was like good times, right? But there's a lot of things that were masked and hidden But now that social media is becoming like this decentralized, non-localized, independent forms of media from so many different sources, it's revealing all these things. And it's like, yeah, it's I think your mentioning of being swept under the rug, that's been happening for too long.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so the light language, I think I saw one of your posts. You took a video of yourself, and there's this girl on Instagram. Her name starts with a B,
Brianna, yeah.
Brianna.
Mhm.
Um, has she been revealing and like displaying the light language as well for a while? And how prominent is this? Like, is it? Are there more people opening up to this? Yeah.
Yeah, I like to say, like, if you ask the questions, you'll receive the answers, and first you just have to open your mind, and you'll see. Like, it could be considered a new thing, but there's a lot of people, that are open about this, and it's a common thing. No, I wouldn't say common, like, in society, but common, like, uh people are aware of light language. People are talking about extraterrestrial life. People are talking about, the different extraterrestrial lives and just what the journey is like of, I would say, remembering who you are.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, her page, I actually like, wasn't following her that long. I came across her page through some other like, I would say, like, channel,
mhm,
person that I was following, and, I had seen her content, and then it was literally, like, around the same time because I was going through this internal struggle, and it really wasn't even that long ago of, like, I don't know if I wanna be public about this,
yeah.
um, because yeah, like I said, like, it started during COVID, and it was, like, this in between time of, like, understanding what it was, but then, like, just the fear of being judged, the fear of being called crazy, like, all these things, and then I saw that she had posted it, and I was like, "Whoa," like, she would like, spoke about how, like, she was feeling the same things of, like, just that fear of being seen,
Mhm,
and she posted it, and it was just, like, something that was like, "You know what? If this person can do it, I can do it too."
mhm,
And yeah, and then I just posted myself, speaking light language, and I just put it with the intention of, like, I'm doing this for me, like, for me to, um, just express openly and not have that under like, the fear was still there, right? But being like, "Okay, I'm doing this, and it is what it is."
mm,
Um, and yeah, I think before I posted on social media though, I started opening up slowly to, like, close friends.
yeah.
So that was kind of like my way to be more comfortable with
Mhm,
it. But even then at first, like,
yeah.
even before that, like, I didn't even share that with my friends. So it was like this process of just being okay with whatever the consequences may be of
Mhm,
being open. But yeah, like, light language is essentially like it's an internal knowing.
mm,
It's something that we all have access to. And although I call myself a channel and there's other people that call themselves channels, I believe that we're all channels. It's just a matter of first opening our minds and also feeling. I think those are, like, kind of like the recipes of it, of, "Okay, I'm opening my mind, I'm not approaching this with a lens of judgment, but more of a lens of, like, just, openness and, yeah, just being able to to hear someone out, even if it doesn't necessarily agree with what you think,
mhm,
and feeling, feeling everything. Um, and also asking, like, there's this, I would call it like a universal law of free will. And free will is, I would say, respected among uh, interdimensional beings that are for the higher good of all. And when I say that, meaning, like you were saying, there's beings of light and there's beings of darkness. So the beings that we can consider of light respect this law of free will. And if we never ask or if we never are open to it, we're blocking off this whole different realm. So a lot of my, uh, I would say, relationship with light language and just development of it has been asking questions to something outside of me and like doing research, like literally looking into different extraterrestrial beings. Like there's information there and you will see like there's, from different constellations and how each race has their own, I would say, their own purpose, and they all have different skill sets, and just being curious about what they do, like just like meeting someone for the first time, it's like, okay, I don't know who you are, I would like to know. So having this approach to these, I would say, more unseen, but still seen, because a lot of my contact with them has been, um, I would say, like, visual through my intuitive perception, like, it's almost like I can see in my head sometimes, I can see visuals of how they look, um, but really being open to it, and in that process, it's also of, like, we always have to use discernment, and that's something that I've been learning, and I feel like I have a very good hold on it because of just the spectrum of things that I've experienced, and when we align ourselves to a frequency of love or a frequency of joy, when we're not in a state of fear, right? Um, like attracts like. So whatever we're in, whatever state we're in, we're gonna have that reflected back to us. And that's just how energy works,
Mhm.
right? So noticing those times, like when I'm in a state of acceptance and gratitude, I know that it's in my highest good, or I'm in the space to truly connect with that is also for the highest good. And I think that's a very clear, not clear, but like important factor when being open and wanting to connect with other beings. And it's really not of adding, I think there's this fear around what we consider good and bad. And I think there has to be this recognition of, yeah, there's really bad shit that exists. And there is things that need to be known, and we need to feel that that grief, because if we don't feel it, and again, if we don't pretend that nothing's going on, it's almost like it's giving power because it's not being brought to light. But once it is brought to light, it loses its charge. And a lot of my connection and just my conversations with these interdimensional beings, it's been a lot about letting go of the distractions, finding what truly like lights you up, noticing how you feel. Your body is its own intelligent system. So knowing how you feel in certain situations or with certain choices and decisions that you make. Um and yeah, and just in my connection, understanding if what I'm being told is feeling like I'm freeing myself or I'm confining myself.
Mm,
And I think that's with everything. Whenever you are listening to advice or listening to something and considering what you're taking in, it's like, do I feel free from this information or do I feel confined?
mm,
Um, and a lot of what I experienced was these downloads, activations, um, of this newfound freedom and being able to see how a lot of my reality, a lot of what I experienced was really just like a bunch of unprocessed emotions and trauma that I didn't want to face. But once I was able to do that, it allowed just to make room for something new. It allowed for these new perceptions and new ideas to come in. It allowed for me to see things in a new way and every situation that we experience, like, really it's just neutral, but it's our perception that makes it good or bad.
mm,
Um, and although, there are some things that we just won't want don't want to experience
mhm,
and doesn't help the betterment of humanity or anybody, um, sometimes we do need to take a step back and look at everything from I would say a lens of non-attachment, because as humans, we are very attached to things. We have a very, kind of like yeah, like black or white view on things when it's a spectrum. It's not one or the other. So yeah, I think, just with the light language, it's been this journey of actually experiencing a spectrum of energy and then choosing what I want to experience, choosing what it is that I want in my life and what I want to be reflected back to me.
mm,
'Cause we have that choice, and a lot of the time we think that we don't. We think that everything that's happening is, like, out of our control, and it I think it could be triggering and yeah, it could be a controversial thing to say of like, "Hey, well, this is happening because you're inviting it or because, it's your fault," but there's just some things that we need to take responsibility for. Um, and again, it's like, how do we perceive it? What what route or what path do we wanna take is really the question.
mm. Beautifully said. Mm, yeah. Many different threads came
Yes.
to my mind. Yeah, the question of, for me, with this fictitious book that I was talking about, there's certain dialogues between characters that discuss, like, there is, like, just the topic of universal moral rights and wrongs. And I don't even know if there are, really, because we are all coming from, our own subjective reality, right? You had a picture in your feed that showed this, like, it was like a gray filtered picture of just human beings just walking the streets of some city, but they had, like, a galaxy on their head.
Mhm.
And, that picture just made me smile, but it also, uh, creatively, through just, like, that picture, it just goes to show that we all have our own realities, in perspectives in our head or just in us in general. Um, so yeah, that's a question that's come to mind is, yeah, universal rights and wrongs. Do the people that have been working in that sex trafficking system think that they're doing something right? Like, maybe they think that they're conducting some kind of experiment that could accelerate the human experience through some fucking weird ass way. and egregious, and I would say from, a consensus of many subjective views, it's very wrong,
Yes.
right? But from these people's
Mhm.
perspective, maybe they think they're doing something for the higher good. Like a lot of cultures have sacrificed an animal
Mhm.
for the gods.
Mhm.
What if these people think they're doing that? Right. So
Mhm.
that's the question that comes to my mind, which
Mhm.
is really hard. That's, like you said, triggering in a way. It's like you
Mhm.
think about those things. It's like, how in any way could you try to question that they are maybe doing something right?
Mhm.
But yeah, that this book has kind of prompted that. Like the son is really upset with his father, who's a billionaire, and the father is like creating technology that helps society accelerate their kind of like Google in a way. Like it's
Mhm.
non-localizing people's ability to communicate and do different things. But then there's also people that think it's a terrible company that's kind of evil in a way.
Mhm.
And the son thinks the father's like a terrible man. He's polluting the earth, and then his cellmate, he's in jail, just talks about like, well, starts to reflect on, have you ever felt greed or a strong desire? And the son's like, no, never. It's like, so, whoa, you've never felt a desire for anything,
Mhm.
for sex or for fame. And the kid's like, oh, well, yes, I have. And uh, it's like this sentence, I'm like that too, uh, which I got from a friend, really is powerful because you can see how different patterns or circumstances or events that occur in someone's life could lead to their to lead to a lower state of themselves that could then be in a survival mode. And so you can realize, like, if that happened to me, I could potentially do some bad things as well. If you've ever like just recalled like one of the most traumatic experiences in your life and maybe you reacted in a way that was just out of survival defensiveness, you realize that we all could do this. Doesn't matter who it is. It's like we can be susceptible to that, right? And so that's just kind of one thread that came to my mind when you were speaking. Another one was, you said you've been able to picture these these beings.
Mhm.
Have you ever felt or noticed any of the darkness? Because there seems to be dark entities as well. Does that come in at times, or is it just this light?
I've experienced it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's I feel like it's hard to say because I myself felt a shame around that. I felt a shame of feeling this darkness. And I think again of what I said of like the dark is only going to continue to have power if we never bring it to light. And first off, I think my experience channeling was, like I was saying, discernment. So before, there was this sense of naivety that I had because I was just very excited. I was like, "Oh, this is new. Like, this is cool. Like, what are these beings? All this."
Mm.
But I didn't know again the spectrum of it, right? And like I said, there were times, especially during COVID, where I was in a very deep, dark place, and I felt very depressed because I was acknowledging this for the first time. So it was almost like this period of, like, before I even knew what I was capable of, and before I even knew, um, the level of compassion and love that I hold, it was, the internal darkness that I had was reflected back to me in a sense of like you can consider it of taking advantage of that naivety or just yeah, just I in a sense I kind of see it as a game of like, oh well, now you're remembering who you are. Let me just try to keep you in this place a little longer, or let me try to keep you down here. And that's what it felt like. And I speak of it as like, again, we see things as external from us, but everything is a reflection of us.
Mhm.
And I think that's a concept that it's definitely hard to articulate because obviously we're not gonna wanna say that we're connected or and have any relation to violence or to pain that's being inflicted or to people that commit crimes and things like that. But just that interconnectedness between all of us of like, well, if we've been ignoring it, it doesn't mean that it's not there. And yes, I did experience times where I I connected with really dark things, and I noticed the difference because the difference was that I like, physically, I felt, like, contracted. I didn't feel this openness, this kind of breath of fresh air, and I think it's more of a physical thing, even though we're speaking on very what we can consider spiritual, unseen things. The indicator of where on the spectrum you're lying, it comes to your body. Because if we stay too much in our head, that's it, we're just gonna stay in our head.
Mhm.
But I feel like the body is really that bridge of, like, how we feel internally and how we feel externally, and a lot of it was really through, like, my dreams. It was, we can call it psychic attacks. So sometimes, it looks like sleep paralysis, or I was having it what I on and, really they weren't dreams because I was lucid the entire
Mm.
time. So I was aware of what was happening. I remembered everything that was happening, and I would just see, like, really, disturbing imagery and, like, I would see these dark entities and, like, it was just, like, literally, like, it was trying to keep me scared and in this state of fear, and there is this there it happened a lot of times, honestly. I was going through this and I'm like, What like, what do I do?" Like, first off, I don't feel like I can share this with anybody, like, how do I process this? And it was in my asking questions, and it was in my turning to a source higher than me and, like, really, like, surrendering and, like, praying that I was able to, like, find this strength and also find this new sense of perception that was, like, maybe that entity or whatever thing is out there, maybe it is there, but it now has no power over me, and it
Mm.
now has no effect over me. And what I began to notice was, like, the we can just call it darkness. The darkness was really just an indicator, and, it was like this push into showing me what I really wanted in life and what I really wanted to feel in life, and how strong I truly was.
Mhm.
Because if all we see is good, right? If our life was just perfect all the time, then it wouldn't in a sense, it wouldn't be good anymore because we wouldn't have anything to compare it to.
Can't have light without the darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there seems and that's kinda tough to to grasp.
I know.
Can't have light without the darkness, and, uh, yeah, it's a difficult thing for me to bear and to contemplate on,
Yeah.
but, and, I I wonder how we as as Austinites, as this community here at Squatch and this kind of energy of the people that I've stumbled upon and you've met here. I wonder if that will spread to, other parts of the world, and I think it will. It's kind of like a goal of this podcast is to
Mm,
like invite people on like yourself and just different people to tell their stories and to share it, shine a light on it, and to open people's minds. And um, I'm curious, what do you, how do you think the next few decades are going to evolve? With COVID occurring, it definitely was like this catalyzing moment in our lifetime.
mhm.
And you're pretty young too, and I consider myself young, even though I just hit 30. Um, yeah, I'm curious with this kind of embodiment of the light language and this channeling. Ho What do you foresee in the future? Like, what and are there any distinct, so this is like 2 questions. What do you foresee in the future? And then also, what distinct messages do you remember from whenever this kind of channel comes through? Because I know you said that sometimes you don't remember it,
Mhm.
but
Yeah, so what I foresee, what I there's gonna be a lot of things that are gonna come up. We're not it's like even though I think as a species, we're evolving and we're growing, it doesn't mean that there's not gonna be distractions and bait. So, being mindful of that, however that looks like, but there may also be a big what we can see a split, and this split will be in the way we choose to live our lives and the way we choose to perceive things.
mm,
So that physically could look like, really having no relationship at all with certain people, because you chose your path and they chose their path. And again, that could be very triggering, but when you are connected to your inner guidance, when you listen to yourself and listen to, I say, a higher power, source, consciousness, God, however you want to call it, there's this deeper level of faith. And, you know, there could be times where that faith will be questioned, that faith will be put to use. But again, it's our perception. So there can be things where we can see it as completely neutral and it's like, okay, this is happening and I'm still enjoying my life. I'm still making a change in the world. I'm still, doing things that keep me feeling good. And then you can be in the same even in the same household as someone and their reality is completely different. They
mhm,
could be spiraling, they could be like, you know, thinking of moving somewhere because they don't feel safe, whatever the reason is. But it's gonna be our choice of how we react to things.
mhm,
And as community is building, community is going to be a very big and important aspect in I would say keeping the illusion and the distractions to the side.
mm,
Because the community grounds you and puts you back into the present moment of like, as humans, we sometimes do need this sense of validation and this sense of being seen. Um, I acknowledge that on a journey of health, self growth or awakening, there's only so much that you can do on your own, as a human. Like, you definitely are capable of everything that you desire and want, but to truly have this experience, to live this life, there are these needs of community. There are these needs of, having this sense of purpose. And when you are in, I would say, in harmony with that, um, that reality that you want to create or co-create is just amplified. So, yeah, just surrounding yourself with what you want to be reflected to you and
Mhm.
what you want to experience more of. Um, but I would say these themes are gonna continue to grow because I think Austin is a great example of that, of, you know, choosing what you want to experience and really attracting that tribe that wants to experience these same things with you. So it's like no longer being like the black sheep, it's kind of like now the black sheep is all the black sheeps are together. So yeah.
And the second question was, are there any distinct messages that you've received that you remember
Yeah,
that you would like to share?
yeah, let's see which one wants to come through. Remember that your internal truth is what's going to guide your decisions. If if you follow a path of continuing to listen to someone else or listen to something else or for the final answer, let's say we're always going to hear different options, different opinions. But before making your decision, go back to yourself, check in with yourself, ask yourself, how does this feel right now? Like, does this feel like something that I wanna pursue? Does this feel like, you know, the route that I want to take? And another thing is things don't have to fall apart completely for us to see the light. I think a lot of times it takes drastic things to happen
Mhm.
to get ourselves to a point of surrender. Like you mentioned, of people not going to, not believing or not going to a space of worship or whatever until something really, really bad
Mhm.
happens. And it's like, it doesn't need to get to that point.
Mm.
It's our choice. But just having gratitude for your day-to-day life, like, already being grateful for what is here, like, maybe some things, you wish are a little bit better, you wish you weren't, in that current situation, but seeing the positive in that, seeing the positive in yourself, like, um that's another thing as humans, like, sometimes all we're thinking of is, like, "Oh, like, we did this wrong," or, like, maybe comparing ourselves and, like, trying to constantly be better, and it's great to want to have that drive, but there needs to be a balance between, having this drive of improving, but also having compassion and grace for who you are in this now.
Mm. Well said. And I think that is a great way to conclude. Where can people find you online? So I know you've got your Instagram, but if there's any other places, feel free to mention.
Yeah, so my Instagram, I am .lailani. I have Twitter too. I know there's a new thing going on, but I'm not on that. So Twitter, and I have, like, a website right now,
Mhm.
where I have more of, like, my services. I do one-on-ones with people, as well as the classes, and yeah, I'm also just around in the community
Cool.
and trying to reach people in person as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll list all that in the show notes. I appreciate your vulnerability, just being here to speak, and it's not easy to display what you've displayed. And yeah, I appreciate you reaching out and sharing your time and your energy and your message. So thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Peace out.
Bye.